Thousands marched over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama yesterday to commemorate the 57th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Surrounded by the family of John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr., the nation's first black vice president and first female vice president, Kamala Harris, joined thousands to honor the defining moment in history when John Lewis and many other civil rights activists were beaten and tear gassed and attacked by police as they peacefully marched for voting rights in 1965. Lewis suffered a fractured skull and went on to become a civil rights icon as well as represent Georgia's 5th congressional district. He died in 2020. Some wondered yesterday just how much progress had been made between then and now, as voting rights legislation has still not been passed in Congress. We did see some news yesterday from the Supreme Court that rejected Republican efforts to block court-ordered congressional redistricting plans in North Carolina and Pennsylvania that favored Democrats. Here's VP Harris on Sunday reiterating the administration's commitment to continuing to fight for voting rights.
President Biden and I are working for this cause every day. We have put the full power of the executive branch behind our shared effort. And if we all continue to work together, to march together, to fight together, we will secure the freedom to vote. It demands we keep going to court to defend this sacred freedom, and it demands we register voters, volunteer as election workers, and yes, of course, drive souls to the polls. And none of this is new, especially to so many of you who have been in this fight for so long.
Joining me now to discuss is someone who was in Selma yesterday, the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, Bishop William Barber, who's now joining me from Montgomery, Alabama. First of all, sir, I want to just give you a chance to tell me, why is it that you are in Montgomery tonight when you were in Selma yesterday?
Well, Charles, going across the bridge on Bloody Sunday is not enough. And so a number of us said this year we weren't waiting for 5 years. We needed to keep walking. And so we just did the first leg of the entire march today, the Monday leg. Then tomorrow I'm headed to Tennessee to be with Starbucks, black and white Starbucks workers that are unionizing. Then back here Friday, and then to Ohio on Monday, where people are mobilizing for the mass Poor People's Low Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington, and to the polls in June. You know, we get it wrong if we act as though Selma was just a one-day event. We get it wrong if we just act as though the Selma to Montgomery campaign was a one-issue event. It was about voting rights and economic justice. Dr. King and so many others made it clear. And we get it wrong if we think it started in '65. Actually, the first mass meeting of the Selma to Montgomery movement was in May of 1963, 3-4 months before the March on Washington. This was always understood to be a campaign and a long-term march and a racial effort. And if we don't act like that today, we actually dismember and dishonor the memory of what happened in 1965.
You need legislation to accomplish the goals that you're marching for. But what is the danger of allowing politicians to dictate how that gets done, when that gets done, the parameters of that work?
Yeah, it's one of the worst forms of doing political and social activism, because the politicians are not built for that, made for that, and they don't operate like that. And that's not Selma. When they marched across that bridge in 1965, they were told by President, we can't get this done. They had been given a deadline, and the deadline failed. But the people decided to change the political context in which the politicians were operating, and politicians respond to the social context. And so we have to remember that our deadline must be victory. So for instance, when we met with the Vice President yesterday, one of the things I said to her is, presidents and vice presidents don't make movements, the people do. And we need to stop talking about what Biden and Harris haven't done. And some part of we need to repent in the movement community what we haven't done. This didn't start this year with Trump or last year. It started with the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, June 25th, 2013. Ever since then, we should have been in the streets. We should have been pushing. Some folks chose the back room. In North Carolina, we went in the streets. We went into court and we won. We beat the worst voter suppression case since Jim Crow and since the Shelby decision in a state. That could have been replicated and should have been. So now we need to repent of what we didn't do and go to work. I said to the vice president, we also need the administration to stop saying nothing's going to get done in the Senate. What you need to do, meet with a group of multiracial, moral, religious leaders, powerful religious of every race, creed, color, bring in that same room impacted people, voting rights lawyers, Black and white, Latino, and economists. Connect the dots between the progressive policies you want to pass and voting rights. And then what about setting August the 6th as the new time frame for pushing this agenda? That's the anniversary of the signing of the Voting Rights Act. And then we in the movement community need to go to work. We're planning June 18, 2022, the Mass Poor People Low-Wage Workers Assembly. In West Virginia, they're planning a 4-day Selma-like march on August the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th to challenge Manchin, to put the pressure up, set a new date. But don't say we can't do this. You know, we did an impeachment and an inauguration and a counting of electoral votes, and the Congress bragged that they could multitask. Well, if you could multitask on that, you can multitask on bringing back a $15 living wage and voting rights back to the floor. The original John Lewis bill, the one that he wrote for the People's Act and the Voting Rights Restoration Act, and then let us put the pressure that needs to be done. But the last thing we need to do is say, it's over. We can't have another vote in the Senate. That we should never let politicians set the deadline on our justice and our rights and our forward movement in this country.
And how did the vice president respond to your suggestions and comments?
Well, actually, she was nodding. Hey, no, it was very short. And I said that we would talk some more. But one of the things we're going to do, you know, we've been saying to the Biden administration for 8 months about this need, direct to the president. His handlers, the handlers haven't responded. I'm wondering sometimes, has he even seen the request? That's just me talking, because it makes no sense to me that you wouldn't sit with the powerful moral leaders, Jewish, Muslims, Christians, impact people, activists and other in this regard, and make this not a Black issue, but an issue of democracy, an issue of civilization. So I saw her nod. I hope she's going to follow through. We're going to write. But let me tell you one more thing, Charles. We just saw a victory, right, in North Carolina. But that's a state court victory where the activists are using state constitutions, those Reconstruction constitutions, to win victories today that the Supreme Court can't overturn because they're so sound. I mean, we have so much here we can be doing, but it's going to require activism in the street, activism in the suites, and at the ballot box. And so, as I said, West Virginia is getting ready to move August 5th, 6th, and 7th. They're not quitting. West Virginia's not quitting. The minors, white people, and Black people are not quitting. Poor People's Campaign is not quitting. Over 200 organizations, 37 other groups, and so forth and so on. How do you quit? I mean, how do you just say they had one vote? Nothing in the history of this country that was ever progressive happened on the first vote. Now, nowhere. It always required more and more in a continuous fight.
So how do you get the Senate Majority Leader? Well, we know he's going to be there until the end of this year, maybe even into the next term. How do you get Schumer to put this back on the legislative agenda?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the president and the vice president should be using the full weight of the presidency. That's where they should be going into the states like Arizona and West Virginia. That's where they should say this is time for power politics. And we believe by having this mass call, we're calling for this massive gathering from people all over, that part of this purpose of this street heat is to say, listen, there are 5 interlocking injustices. Systemic racism, you heard me before, poverty, ecological devastation, denial of healthcare, and the war economy, and the false moral narrative, religious nationalism. And we have a third Reconstruction agenda. And we're going to put a face on it so that if they don't do this, then they'll be saying no to the people. Not no to Manchin, not no to McConnell, but what we're planning in June 18th is to put the people's faces. I mean, white and Black and brown, who are saying, we will not accept this. You cannot have a democracy that can't vote on democracy. You can't have a democracy that says you get one vote. That's all you get. You get one vote on the thing that matters the most in a democracy, and that is the right to vote. You get one vote on living wages. You get one vote on health care. And then if you don't win, you go away. Now, like Charles, let me say this. You know, I want to say to Democrats, y'all really think Trump would act like this if he wanted something? So you're going to let bad people be more determined than good people? That makes no sense at all. You want to use the power. Use the power. Even if the vote is lost, bring it back to the floor. Have the debate. Let everybody see it. And then if they vote against you, use that for motivation for the fall elections. And let's go after these 5 Senate seats that can be won. In other words, if you roll over and play dead, you lose again and again and again, and you lose the people.
Bishop William Barber, thank you as always. Take care of yourself there in Montgomery.